towards the end, he would get upset if I would do anything without asking him first, even if it was something for my kids. Argue with me, scream at me in front of the kids and stuff, putting his foot in my face, throwing food at me, waking up with water being poured in my face.
But when it was physical, it was like a war in the house. It was so dramatic and traumatic. The isolation for me was by far more difficult than the physical abuse. I no longer had that security that no matter what happens, my parents are going to be there for me, my family's going to be there for me.
I had got beat up really bad with a coffee pot, and it broke. It became a weapon, and it was sharp edges, and he was pounding me in my head, and I was on the floor crying, stop, stop, please, you're hurting me. And he was like, no, I'm going to kill you, bitch, I'm going to kill you. And I just remember getting real weak and like seeing my blood on the floor. And that's when I knew then that I had to go.
Well, he had threatened to kill himself, and then it went from that to that he could kill me and then himself, because then I'd be gone. People say, well, why don't you just leave if you're not happy or whatever? And it's not that easy.
I was facing, not having a place to live, didn't have work. It was very complex.
I didn't have any control of my finances. I didn't know how much money we had in the bank half the time. He paid all the bills. Almost everything was in his name.
You are down to the point where you've lost everything, and then your self-esteem is like so shallow that you think less of yourself.
I needed schooling, I needed housing, I needed clothes, I needed my kids. So I had to work. I had a lot that I had to correct in my life in order to get on my feet. I hid away in the streets for a few weeks, but then I came to the shelter.
She would call me and see how I was doing. She put me in touch with an attorney that I could talk to if I had questions.
For somebody here to say, we understand, and we're here to listen, well, it makes a big difference because I had nobody. I had nobody to talk to. It's a big difference.
It took 10 years for me to get out, unfortunately. It took 10 years, and it was the last 2 years that it got so bad that I finally said towards the end, I have to get out.
Other places looked down on me. They thought I wasn't going to make it. I never got my kids back. I was going to die of drugs. I was going to go back to my husband. I never heard that from them. They said, Sharif, you can do this. You're going to make it.
They're here to help. They're here to encourage you and help you to do whatever it is that you want to do to make your life better.
You're not the one that has to be embarrassed because you're not the abuser. You have to lift up your head and be strong.
What they gave me was a chance. I couldn't have gone through that by myself. I really needed that guidance.
You gave me the power to have my life back that I haven't had for a long time. It's strength to know that somebody cares. Well, welcome to JTOLTV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green. I know what we just saw was very sobering, and this is a very serious subject. So listen, can you please just share, because we always think everybody got it together because they look like they got it together. Or for someone who'd be like, she tripping, she always been like that, or he's always been like that. Please share this video. It's very, very, very crucial. I love, my thing is always trying to inform our community to make our community better. So listen, again, welcome to JTOL TV Talk. I am your host, Sonia Green. This is Women's Month, congratulations to all those dynamic women who are out there making community happen. And our subject tonight is it's a very serious subject. And we're talking about women and abuse, whether it be sexual, mental, emotional, physical, it's still abuse. It's just the form that it comes in. And listen, don't ignore, just don't, people be tripping. Don't just ignore them because they tripping. People gonna trip, right? So listen, I want to just bring on my special guest, Mrs. Tia Payne from legacy31.org. Hi there, sis. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Looking fly like new money. Um, And I wanted to invite you on because I thought it was just ironic. I never knew it was Women's History Month. It just happens to be the time that I invited you on. And this subject here, especially since COVID, has been very serious. I know there's been an uptick, whether you're straight, gay, married or unmarried, even if you're just in a family situation, that abuse have increased simply because usually everybody's going about their lives every day and you don't have to spend 24/7 with people. And then when you spend 24/7 with some people, they find out that you didn't really like them that much. And the abuse has really, really increased. So can you tell us something about who you are and tell us about Legacy 31?
Yes. Again, I'm Tia Payne. So Legacy 31 is a faith-based organization that I have here in Summit County, where we deal with sexual assault and domestic violence, primarily with domestic violence because that is my story. I do it on the faith-based end because a lot of my situation happened, not necessarily within the church, but people who were in the church, some in leadership in the church. And I felt like through years of being an advocate through years of being a youth advocate, I believe that was one of those areas where we don't talk about abuse and then try to connect it back to the church. And so a lot of people don't understand that you may go to church, but things still happen to church people. And that does not discount the fact that, churches having those resources available, or someone to even just talk to someone who comes and discloses that. For me, when it was in my situation, my church is the first place I went to, and they did not offer me the type of resources I felt should have been necessary. And so I just learned a lot through working in the field over the last 15 years about proper resources, making sure, someone understands what it is going on. So that's what Legacy 31 is about. We do a lot of prevention. So I have youth groups where we talk about awareness. We talk about what is consent, because sometimes, our young people today may not understand consent. We talk about healthy relationships. I work with our victim assistance program here, where I teach intimate partner violence to those who come to a class through their work, or if an agency wants to, know how do we respond to disclosure if someone here works and this is going on in their family, how do we help that person? So I teach that here in Summit County. I want to get back into the school so I can be very intentional of having those conversations with our youth growing up. And then I work privately with women who are currently in abusive situations, or they're trying to get out of their abusive situation. I offer support groups. I have a She Survived movement where we have a newsletter, we have a t-shirt, we have a hoodie, we got some leggings. And we just talk about being survivors. And it's a way that we're able to use our voices, because so long people, they want to attach shame to our stories. And I didn't feel like that was the purpose. And so I decided, through having the platform that I had, that I was going to give a way for people to talk about their stories. There's no shame attached to it. It is what it is. This is my truth. It happened to me, and I'm going to share that. And so that's what we do through She Survived, which it took off quite a bit because so many people are in those situations and they're told not to talk about it. Oh, hush, it happened when you were a kid, or no one's going to believe you. And those are the type of things that we're told. And I'm the type of person that I'm going to use my voice to be loud about those very situations that people are telling us to hush about. I'm going to talk about those things because I think that's how we try to put a dent in the pandemic that it is, by, you know, not allowing domestic violence and sexual assault to continue to survive in our silence. So I believe by talking about it, we're shining a light on these situations and we're making people aware it happens and we need to talk about it. We need to shine some light on it, you know, so we can do, you know, our part. And, you know, making sure, you know, we're trying to put it to an end, that we're changing those narratives and conversations when it comes to people being victimized, that we're not re-victimizing them by doing victim blaming, but really trying to help and understand how we can better help whoever it is that's in that situation.
Wow, that was a mouthful. And I want to say, and I grabbed it all. Again, you all, please share this video. I think don't just blow by it and think it's not important. You know what I'm saying? Because there are countless people out there that you have no idea that are going through domestic situations. And if you would just take an hour out of your time and just hear what this woman of God has to say, this sister talking about domestic and sexual abuse, you may be able to help somebody, or if not help them, at least point them in the right direction. Right. So please, please don't blow by here and count it as nothing. We're not going to prophesy. We ain't doing that. We're going to put some stuff on the table. We're talking about things, concerns, and issues that people deal with every day, and you have no idea because they have learned to mask them. And you know, and then the first time something happens and that woman is either close to death or near death or raped, you're going to say, I didn't know. Well, if you listen today, you can probably get a better grip or a handle on seeing something that you may notice, some sign or some symptom or something. So sis, I heard you say a whole lot. So can you, if you don't mind, can you just share about a little bit of your story, and then tell us what is domestic violence and what is sexual violence? What are those things? Because we think we know. And before you say that, I just want to say something. Listen, on the bottom, there's these phone numbers: National Sexual Assault Hotline. There's RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest Network. Please call National Domestic Violence Hotline. Please keep these numbers right close to you because you never know, you might need them. So sis, I'm turning it over to you.
So how my story began is I grew up in a home where my father was a pastor, but he was very, very abusive to us in the home. And so as a child, I really kind of felt like my voice had been stifled. One, because no one took it serious. The multiple calls that was made, no one took it serious. And back then, you know, domestic violence and sexual assault is still a very taboo subject, although we've made great strides in having these conversations. But when I'm 43, so as a child growing up, you know, we're just going to say 30 years ago, they didn't talk about it. It was very hush hush. It was what happened in the family stays in the family, which, you know, we still do a lot with today. But back then, you know, you didn't talk about it at all. And so I felt like there's these people that I'm reaching out to, the places that I knew as a child to reach out to, and no one offered much help, and the violence in our home continued. It didn't stop. It got worse. And so, you know, when I grew up, I repeated the cycle because this is what was witnessed in my home. So I grew up and repeated what my normal was. It was normal for me, you know, for the yelling and the cussing and the smacks and the hits and the punches. That was a normal situation for me. Like, I can understand now there's this part of me that was like, this can't be normal. But at the same time, it was still very, very normal. And so I grew up and I repeated, you know, the cycle. I found myself, pregnant with a set of twins, being abused, being flung across rooms, being smacked in my face, being spit on and talked down to. And the crazier part is the person I married was someone that lived in our home for probably about 2 years. So he was able to witness how we were treated in our home. And so there was nothing in him that thought he was doing anything wrong, because that's what was witnessed for him as well. And so I grew up thinking I could never leave this situation. I could never get a divorce because, I was going to go to hell because it wasn't pleasing to God. And so I found myself stuck. I went to my church. I reached out to my church and I was told I had to pray and, God was going to do a miracle. And so when I'm in a community, I say those words, stop telling people to pray and stay, and instead work with this person on finding healthy resources that is going to get them to safety and still offer that prayer to them. And that's not what happened in my situation. I was not told to leave. I eventually ran. When, he pulled a gun on me that I did not know he had. And it scared me because I believe I was at that point put in a situation to realize that he could potentially take my life and I wasn't going down without a fight. And so I could potentially take his life. And so at that point, it became very real that I needed to get out of that situation. Not to mention there was, me being an alcoholic and suicidal and depressed based off of how I was raised and then continuing to repeat this cycle. So here I am, a 24-year-old woman, and I'm in this situation with no way out and can't understand why no one is offering to help. And so I left. I finally left. And, I went to California and I stayed with my parents. And things weren't better from when I grew up. And so, I took my children at the time. I had 2 children from my first marriage, and we left and we stayed, elsewhere for probably about a year, a little over a year. And then I eventually made my way back to Ohio. And so coming back to Ohio, I was still separated. I was going to be separated forever. I didn't believe in divorce, but I also didn't believe that I should stay in a situation where I was being abused by that point. And so I left and went my separate way and was just going to stay, stay married and separated. And I remember I always wanted to be a youth advocate. I always wanted to help children who lost their voice. I wanted to be that person that was going to help. And so I started working as an assistant director at a daycare. I went to school. I got my degree in child development. I'm going to help little kids that have no voice. And through that job, I met this young lady who began to tell me about a job that because I was so passionate about helping kids. And she was like, is there a reason why you want to do this? And so I kind of gave her, a condensed version of my childhood. And she said, man, I work this job called Children Who Witness Violence. And I think you would be perfect. She said, unfortunately, people never leave this job. She said, we stay forever because the job is amazing. And, I was like, oh, as quick as I went up, that's as quick as I came down. And I said, okay, and so I continued doing the job that I was doing. And 2 weeks later, she actually came back to the daycare because her children attended. And she said, you will never believe what just happened. She said, someone put in their notice and she said, I recommended you. She said, all you need to do is call this number. She said, I'm pretty sure they're going to give you this job. She said, because I really talked about you. And I called the number and they scheduled me an interview. And the craziest part was they brought me back for a second interview. And the president of this agency decided he wanted to interview me for some random reason. I mean, of course, we know it was God, divine right there. And so he and I got to, talking in this interview. And he finally stopped me and he said, are you a woman of faith? And I said, yes, very, very shocked that this was part of the conversation. I said, yes, I am. And he said, I can tell. He said, so I'm giving you this job. He said, I think with what you just told me, I think you'll be perfect for this job. And he looked at me and he said, welcome to the team. And I walked out of there with a total brand new career. Like this was, I'm heading in this direction, and here we are in this direction, because now I'm on a totally and different career path. But I fell in love with being a victim advocate due to that job. My heart was invested in the stories that I heard. It was invested with those children who were living in shelters. It was invested in those children who was witnessing violence in their communities and in their homes. And so I ran full speed ahead, and I started learning. And I didn't know before I started working this job that I was an abused child. I didn't know about child abuse. I didn't know about domestic violence. I didn't know. I just knew that was what happened in people's homes. But I began to work this job, and people start talking about domestic violence and power and control and all of these things. And domestic violence is, when an intimate partner has power and control over you, psychological, all of these things. They're yelling and they're putting their hands on you, using weapons against you. And I'm hearing all of these new words and terms that I had no idea. And I was like, my God, that's what I lived. That's what I was living when I was with him. And so I learned all of these words. I learned child abuse, and I learned domestic violence, and I learned sexual violence, and I learned all of these things that I had experienced and never knew the names of it because no one talked about it. No one told us about these things. And so through this job, that I found my education. I found my healing. Now, I always tell people, I do not recommend, if you are not in a healed space, trying to go into that. But for me, I didn't know. I didn't know until I was already there working that all of these things that I was learning about was all of the things that I lived these situations. But it helped me to come to terms with, I'm not crazy. These things really did happen to me. A lot of people look at you like, no, your father would never. No, he would never. The sad part is, you can have a wonderful experience with this person and think the world of this person, but that does not take away from my experience. And so when I talked about my experience, people were looking at me like, your father would never do that. He wouldn't do something like that. Or, he's in the church. You're saying your husband? Yes, I'm saying my husband did that. And people tried to take that away from me because their experience was different.
Wow, that's a lot. So tell us what does domestic violence mean? What if we had to put it in a literal term, we had to write it up on the wall, on the chalkboard. Tell me, what does domestic violence mean?
So we kind of use interchangeably domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Okay. So in a nutshell, intimate partner violence, domestic violence is an intimate partner having some type of power and control over you, where they're isolating you, they're mentally, verbally, physically abusive towards you. That could cover financial abuse. They're just not, giving you enough money to survive, buy food and things for the house to take care of your home. Financial abuse, spiritual abuse. They're using scriptures against you. Verbal abuse, talking down to you, cussing at you, yelling at you, using gaslighting, all of those type of things. The reason now we have this terminology, intimate partner violence, or IPV, is because within intimate partner violence, you do cover sexual assault. And that is someone forcibly, pressuring you or forcing you to have sex with them against your will. We'll watch a movie or a show and we'll see the white van come grab someone, or I'm walking down the dark alley and, someone drags me in the bushes and rape me. Those are not very common cases when we're talking about sexual violence. Sexual violence is typically somebody, someone that you have put a little bit of trust in, or you felt comfortable to date them or something like that. That's how often sexual violence happen, not, the little cut and dry cases that we see, on the TV. Those aren't normal situations, although they do happen. And so we took that one domestic violence sexual violence and we came up with intimate partner violence, and that's your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or something like that. However, domestic violence will cover, I live in a home and maybe my parents are abusing me, or, I have a sister that's abusing me or a brother that's abusing me. And so domestic violence will fall under that as well. But when we're talking intimate relationships, then we refer to that as intimate partner violence.
Wow, wow, wow. So I'm going to play this one clip. We'll be right back. You guys hold on one second. I just want to play this clip right quick, and we're going to discuss it.
You ready?
Yep.
And for the rest of my life, I don't want to be with anyone but you.
What are you doing? Until death do you part.
I do. Well, maybe I wouldn't have to worry about other guys looking at you if you didn't dress like a whore.
I just don't know what I would do if you were with anyone but me.
Where you been? Hey, you look at me when I'm talking to you. Do you hear me? Look, I didn't want to do that. But you just don't listen. Who's that?
Hey! You sure you're okay? I'm fine.
Who's gonna take you in but me? You will never see your son again. How about next time I make sure you never leave the house again? Guess it's my lucky damn day. Look what I found under the bathroom sink.
Johnny, wait, no, hold on!
YWCA Hotline. How can I help you? Every day, 24,000 women are abused by someone they love. Just one phone call can help put a stop to it.
Wow, that was powerful right there. Wow, and listen, we're not trying to trigger anyone. What we're trying to do, listen, if you're being triggered, please call one of those numbers down there. You have the sexual assault hotline, you have the RAIN hotline scrolling across your page, and the domestic hotline number. Please, if you need help, call one of those numbers. It's never too late. Please, please, please. So we just had a conversation, just what you just explained to us before I showed the video, how it what you call it, an IVP?
IPV, intimate partner violence.
And we saw that, how he loved her and she was the best thing for him. And then as things went along, he started taking more control of her life.
Yeah.
So what's the numbers? Can you tell me the numbers, the statistics of women, the age range? Is it an age range? Is it color? Can you just share that?
So 1 in 4 women will be abused in that type of situation. And just for the sake of this conversation, 1 in 3 teenagers will be in that situation, and their typical abuse that's reported happens at school. So when we talk numbers and statistics, we're talking numbers that people actually report. People don't report. They will, but it's still a very slanted view of what we consider, the true number of domestic violence. And we can tell that because like you said earlier, the pandemic, our numbers actually went up with the type of calls that were going into hotlines and, police reports and things of that nature. So the numbers actually went up when the pandemic happened, being forced to be in confined spaces with, your abuser, where, sometimes you can, not think about it too much, but now everything closed down. So all we have to do is be in the house and look at each other. And so the rate of abuse actually went up, during, the very beginnings of the pandemic, still alive today. Due to, the pandemic forcing people to be at home, where we think home is our safe space, but everybody's home is not their safe space. So 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men will have been abused. I always use the reference, you know, if I'm out with at least 3 of my friends and I'm the 4th person, I can use myself because 1 in 4 of us have been in that situation. And, you know, it happens to be me in this situation. I was in that situation, fighting for my life. And so when we talk numbers, especially when we talk people of color, there's this intersection between I don't want to be abused anymore, but neither do I want to call the authorities or the police, because we look all over social media, we look all over the news, and we see our men of color being, you know, killed by police. And, you know, for Black women in particular, I don't want to have the guilt of being the reason why another Black man was shot and killed. So I'm not reporting either because I don't trust the police. So when we think of numbers like that, then, you know, we're thinking of marginalized populations as well. They don't report. There's a very real distrust of the police when it comes to who reports, you know, domestic violence or even sexual violence. So we take into account those numbers as well. I actually, you know, a few years ago, I actually did a training where we actually talked about, you know, the lived experiences of women of color who had been abused. And the very real thing that I kept hitting on is if I have a distrust of the police because I've seen everything that has happened with the police in our society, I'm not calling the police. So I might stay a little bit longer in that situation, or, you know, I might try to handle it through my own type of justice or through family type of justice or something like that versus reporting. So then we still have, you know, slanted numbers when we're talking about our statistics as well.
Wow, that's a very real subject there. And speaking of just how people of color, you're almost in a trap because you want him to stop or her to stop,
Right.
but you can't call the police because you're afraid that cop might do something to him.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
So listen, guys, I know this is a very triggering subject. I know, but it's a very much needed subject. And I know y'all tired of me talking about, you know, if this was a prophetic, y'all be on here. But listen, some of y'all in the church are going through. Some of y'all pastors have told you to stay and pray and wait it out. God's going to deliver him while you consistently getting your head smashed in,
Yep.
beaten, raped every night. You don't know if your children are being molested, whatever the case may be. And then, you know, so it's so many parameters going on. And again, if you are watching, because I know a lot of people tell me they watch, they always tell me they watch, but I need you to click that like button. You know, I need you to hit that like button because it's not about so much you. And I'm gonna tell you this, and I just believe how smart our dad, Father God, is, that he will probably put you in a circumstance that's gonna start you to make you thinking, well, man, was Susie like that, or was, you know, Shaquita living in that life, or was, you know, John living like that, or was, you know, Rashawn, was he in that type of situation, or was the little girls that's in your community living like that because you took the time to just hear some symptoms and some signs of what's going on. So sis, I'm gonna play one more video and then we're gonna finish this conversation. This is very good. When I come back, I want to know what are the symptoms and what are the signs? How do we know? You know, if we don't see it on the outward appearance, if we don't see the black eye, the neck choked, or whatever the case may be. And again, guys, please, if you need help, if you need assistance, there I have scrolling on the bottom the National Domestic Violence Hotline, also RAIN, also Sexual Violence Hotline. Please, please call. If you know someone in that situation, please call. If you've been in that situation, get some counseling. Listen, God does heal us, but he also know he put counselors out there. There's someone that can make rational sense of the thoughts.
Right.
We need to have these conversations. So it says, I think it says 1 out of every 3 girls are sexually abused by someone in their family. And if you think about the whole totality of the thing, it's a whole lot that goes along with that. So can you just share some of your insight on that?
Yeah. So a lot of times people, especially like sexual assault is probably that one that we truly don't talk about. And so people automatically will assume that if you've been sexually assaulted, it's because of something that you did. The unfortunate part is courts will actually have that thought in their head. So, sexual assault is one of those very hard to prove things, because you could literally go up there and take the case as a he said, she said. When it comes to children being abused, a lot of times if you're not over 12, they're not even putting you on the stand. Children tend to change their stories if they're continuously questioned. So now I feel like you don't believe me, so I'm going to say something different the next time someone says it. It's one of those things that instead of us having the conversation and talking about the conversation, what were you doing that someone did that to you? Even in our homes when it happened, what were you doing? And I'll, reference back to, people of color. People of color will try to handle the situation. Again, we're talking about that intersection between calling the police or getting authorities involved. We'll try to handle it within the family. But at the same time, we're still re-victimizing the person that it happened to, because now we can't talk about it because uncle and grandpa and all of these people, they still come around and they still come to family dinner. And so you're re-victimizing, by not calling the police, honestly, or not getting authorities involved. I can't talk about it anymore because mom or dad will be upset if I talk about it, because now, as the person who was victimized by that, now it had to be my fault if no one wants to talk about it. Oh, that bad thing happened, so let's not talk about that. Let's hush about those type of conversations and not talk about it. Children tend to be, most likely abused because again, it's that power and control. Sexual abuse is never about sex, ever. It's never about sex. It's about the power and control you can have over someone. It's not ever about sex. I don't know how often I can say that. It's not ever about sex. It's literally about power and control. The power and control that you can have over someone more defenseless than you. I controlled this situation. We'll talk about, young girls. I had a session not that long ago, and it was some teenagers, and we were talking, and, I had the conversation with them. A lot of times we'll have someone that's been sexually assaulted as a child or a young person, and then suddenly we're talking about how promiscuous this person is. People don't understand my power and control was taken away from me. So the only way I can gain it back is now I'm making the decision on who I'm going to be involved with sexually, so I can gain back my power and control, and no one can ever take it from me again. So I'm doing everything in my power that I'm making these choices and I'm making these decisions. But we don't have those conversations, so no one knows that. No one delves deeply into these conversations and talk about it. No one wants to talk about that. Women 9 times out of 10 will victim blame another woman when a woman claims sexual abuse or states, I've been sexually abused. What were you doing? Why were you over there? Why did you drink that much? So instead of believing survivors, we're trying to find a reason of why that horrible thing happened to you, because in our mind, we can't reconcile that somebody did that to you. And then it's just uncomfortable, and I don't want to talk about it anyway. So why were you there? I remember this one time I had a conversation with my husband, and he said domestic violence and sexual assault is that one crime that we always question the victim. He said, but if your car is hijacked, no one is asking you why you were in that rough neighborhood where these things happen all the time. He said, why do we ask victim who's been perpetrated against, who's been victimized by domestic violence, sexual assault, all of these horrible things? We're always in their face. Why? What were you doing? What were you doing? But other crimes, we don't do that, because other crimes, we can accept other crimes. But those intimate crimes where people are violating my person, we can't accept those in our head. I talked about last week, the intersection between God being a good God and the reason why doors are being shut in my face when I want to come talk to your church leadership about how do you respond to this. People fail to understand that people make bad choices. They make bad choices while they go to church, while they're in church leadership, and they'll victimize people in the church with domestic violence, child abuse, all of those things. But we don't want to talk about it in the church, because then people start wondering, well, God's supposed to be a good God. And that's what we're preaching about in our churches, is God being a good God. But no one wants to have the conversation that God gave you free will. And with your free will, you chose to make this decision. That's not okay. And as the church, we got to have that conversation. As the world, we got to start having these conversations, because we're letting perpetrators off left and right. Left and right, they're getting off. And unfortunately, unless someone reports, there's not a lot of anything that we can do, honestly. Let's take domestic violence, for example. I know you asked me signs and different things like that. I'm wearing, clothes all the time so people won't see bruises, or, I'm putting extra makeup on to cover bruises. I'm isolated away from my friends and family. I don't hang out anymore. He's upset. Like, people can tell. They truly can tell when something's a little off, because my family and friends know me. So if I'm in that situation and Tia starts acting differently than Tia usually acts, those close to me should be able to tell, even if they may not know, oh, domestic violence, something happened, or sexual assault, something. They should be able to tell there's something a little different about me. And as my friend or family, you start questioning me at that point. I've talked to many family members of people in abusive situations. The person being victimized, especially when we're talking about intimate partner violence, it takes a long, long time for people to typically leave. We're going to say seven or more times before someone in that situation will leave. It took me a long time to leave. And I still think I left quickly. But when I think of all the times I tried to leave, it took me a long time to leave. You're thinking about all of these things. We got kids, we got bills, we got a house, we got a car, we got all of these things. People judge people for staying in those situations, but they have no idea what their reasonings are for staying in that situation. And all we can do as an outside person looking in is be that resource. Be that resource when they're finally ready to go. Make sure we have information. Families are quick to turn their backs on somebody being abused. I can't believe you're that stupid. Why would you allow somebody to treat you that way without ever understanding the situation that they're in? Can you be the resource? You know what? I got this number of this agency called Legacy 31. Maybe you should call her and talk to her. Keep encouraging that person. Do some safety planning with that person. Let's talk about the sky being purple. And the day I call you and tell you that, that's the day you need to get some police to my house. That's our safe word. Let's talk about making extra sets of keys and, making sure you got all your important papers with your trusted person. Having those type of conversations with people. Sometimes you have to plan to leave. Most people don't understand the day a victim leaves a domestic violence situation. That is the most crucial time where a lot of victims lose their life. And people don't understand that. It's the scariest, most unsafe time. It's the day I tried to leave. The day I left, there was a gun involved. That could have went wrong in so many different ways. It could have went very wrong. The day a victim leaves, that's a crucial time when we're talking about safety. So sometimes you got to plan it out for a couple months. Oh, he has a business trip, or he's going, on vacation with his friends. That's the time. This is the time I'm a plan to leave. I'm going to keep everything as normal as possible before that day comes, because when he goes out of town, that's my opportunity. And having somebody to help, having somebody that has your back, that helps you get away. Sometimes those things are crucial. They have classes now that, as a hairdresser, that I can go to this class and I forgot what it's called, cut it out or something like that. And, a domestic violence advocate will teach you signs of someone in a domestic violence situation. It's always, I'm timid. I don't say anything. The way that person treats me in front of everyone. Again, let me bring it back here. Your relationship with that abuser has nothing to do with what my relationship is. And you're discounting me as the survivor, as the person who deals with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde persona. You discount me and the things that I've been through because you don't believe that person could do it because your experience is a little bit different. Most times, abusers ain't abusing you. They abusing me. So how can you then say, and that's why so many people won't have the conversation, is because that nice deacon in the church that took me and fed me soup that one day, he would never do that. He was such a good guy. He was an amazing guy. And so we allow the relationship that we have with an abuser to affect whether or not we're going to believe that I'm being abused by that person. And so there's all these different intersections of how, oh, you had that bruise on the side of your face. What happened? And listen, people make up crazy. I ran into the doorknob. And although these things happen, those are some of your first signs that something might not be okay. I'm always in the hospital. I'm always calling off work. It's 90 degrees outside, but I'm wearing a hooded sweatshirt, so you can't see the bruises around my neck.
Wow, this is very sobering. I was just sitting up here thinking, you said some key things, how we in the body of Christ, so we don't like really talking about it. And we go to church to get healed, right? Mm-hmm. We go to church to get free. We go to church to get delivered and praying that God would do something. And the very thing that God does, because we always think God's going to get off his throne, will come down and supernaturally blow in your face and it'll be over. But the Bible does say, God did say, I've given you all things pertaining to life and godliness. That means I've given you counselors that you can talk to. I've given you people that can tell you to run. I've given people to have a desire to give you a safe place to stay. All these things. And I agree. Don't have me get to talking about the church, because I think the church, it's almost, the thing that's out now with the body of Christ, and I'm not hating on the body of Christ, please. Right. Don't think, she's talking about the church. But we don't want to talk about anything real, in the sense everything is all good, but you can't sleep at night. Everything is all good, but you can't even function during the day. Everything is all good. I'm scared. I can't trust nobody. And then, but you think everything is okay. And we, this is this thing, I call it, what they call it, oh God, it's what Joel Osteen does. I call it easy Jesus, a way so we can just not really deal with the issues that's going on in our lives and people's lives. Touch your neighbor, turn around 3 times, touch your neighbor in front of you and you're behind you. And all 3 of those entities, or 4 of those entities, are going through, including yourself. But we thinking, we sit up here crying to God in our heart, and God is saying, I got somebody for you, but we won't bring it to the house of the Lord. Just a friend of mine, my dear sister, who gets me into things, and I really don't like them at first, and then I find out I like them. So what she's doing now, there's an initiative in the city of Detroit that's doing some training, and some faith-based churches are now opening the doors so their members can, so this trauma can be, bring some healing to some of the members of the church. And so it's good to hear that, because as much, and it's like I'm looking at the numbers now, and it bothers me that we're not really taking this very seriously. You know what I mean? And so I really, and I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing, because if it saves one, then we will accomplish what we want to do, right? So, sis, can you tell us how to? Let me just play a commercial, and then when I come back, I want you to tell us how can we get in contact with you, and you tell us about your webpage, and tell us about some things that you got coming up. I'm just going to play. I just got to find one commercial to play, right? And I should play my commercial, right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
This is Latia Davis, owner and CEO of Made by TLT Virtuous Veiling. Covered in Beauty, Made in Prayer is not just a tagline. It's my mission to make garments that are beautiful, affordable, and inspired by God. Sewing is my passion, and every garment is made with you in mind.
So again, tell us about your organization. Tell us what you got coming up. Tell us about your books and all the things that we need to know.
Yes. So I wrote a book in 2017 called Reflections of a PK, Preacher's Kid. And that really just kind of goes into details about how we were raised. I heard you say you're not talking against the church, coming against the church. That's the same conversation that I've had since 2017 with the release of my book. I'm not talking against the church. I'm not coming against the church. I serve in my church. I love God. I have a relationship with God. I teach. I do all those things. But at the same time, I do believe there has to be the conversations that no one is talking about, because it happens at church too. And so that's my book. It shows my father in a light that some people knew and some people didn't do. When I first came out with the book, a lot of people was mad. Like, how could you? That's your father. Well, he still did these things, and I love him, but he did these things, and he was an abuser and he was a preacher too. And so I sell that on my website, legacy31.org. This month, I've just been doing a lot of conversations, a lot of talking. Next month for April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we have a couple of things coming up. I'm going to be speaking on a panel at Kent State University here in Ohio, where we're going to be talking about unlearning sex. So we're going to really be focusing on sexual violence. And then we have our Denim Day photo shoot that's the annual thing that we do. And that's part of the She Survived movement that I do. And that's a whole bunch of survivors who will put on that She Survived shirt. And we're coming out with a teal one for the awareness color. And we do a photo shoot. We simply do a photo shoot. We hold each other up. We encourage each other. We're excited for every person who survived. And we take photos. I love taking pictures. So that's what we do on that day. And then I also have a Survivor's Corner, and it is a type of virtual platform where we're actually speaking and talking to people who have survived sexual violence, who've been sexually assaulted. We're going to have that conversation. I do a lot of one-on-one crisis intervention. So if you are that person who is in that situation and you just simply need somebody to talk to, and I'll go so far as to say there's a lot of people to talk to, but not many people will also talk to you and tell you that God still loves you and he didn't call you to be abused. He has better for you in this world, in this life. You are clothed in strength and dignity. God is close to the brokenhearted. I'm the person that can have that conversation with you while still giving you facts, while still giving you education surrounding sexual violence and domestic violence. A lot of times in some of our more public agencies, God is a no-no. We don't talk about God because you know what? Maybe you don't believe in God, or you don't. So we don't talk about it in those situations. And that was one of the reasons why I began Legacy 31, is because I loved God with all my heart. And I needed to know, when I decided to divorce my abusive, narcissistic ex-husband, that God still loved me and called me his own, because I was raised for so many years to believe that God ain't pleased with divorce. God hates divorce. This is what was instilled in me. And so when I made that choice, everything when it came to my faith was attached to that. And I walked around depressed and, felt unloved, because this is the things that was taught to me. And I'm pretty sure, because I work with pastors' wives and a lot of people in this situation, and they struggle. They struggle with that, connection between, God don't like divorce, but the person I'm married to is abusing me. People struggle in that area. People struggle simply because they want to understand why God would allow this to happen to them. And I can tell you that person made the choice, and that has absolutely nothing to do with God. Absolutely nothing to do with God, that person chose their free will to abuse you. Sometimes people need to hear that so they'll understand that God is still an amazing God and he loves us and he does not want that for us. That's what I needed to hear. When I joined the church I needed to hear that there was nowhere in the Bible that said I was going to hell because I was divorcing someone that was abusive to me. I needed to hear, find that in the Bible. You know, God loves you, right? Why would he want you to be abused? I needed to hear that. And so that's why I love being Legacy 31, because I can say that. Where if you go to a bigger agency, they don't take into account your faith. I can take into account your faith and I can have that conversation with you. And so I do. I pray before every session I have with someone. We're praying. And then when we're done, we're praying again and we're talking about God and we're talking about how much God loves us and how he wants the best for us. And I find pleasure in having that conversation. I find pleasure in having the conversation. And whatever church who may invite me, I find pleasure in going into that church and saying, these are real situations that happen and are perpetrated by people in a church, just like people in the world. It was perpetrated against me by someone who went to church and got up and speak and did all of these things in the church. And people looked at them like a mighty man of God. They're still human. They still do human things and make human choices. And as the church, as the people of God, we have to understand that that has nothing to do with God, that someone chose their free will to do exactly what they wanted to do. That ain't got nothing to do with God. And so I want to have that conversation. And so I do. And people be mad, but it's time out, to silence these type of conversations. It's time to have these conversations because it gets people free. It will get people healed and delivered and literally set free. I'm a witness. Someone had that conversation with me and it changed my life. God healed me. And I'm talking the mental. I was long gone from the actual physical aspects of it, but mentally I was still there. Mentally, I was still in that situation due to a lot of things. But someone had the courage to have that conversation with me, and God was able to heal and deliver me and change my mind, give me a whole new, brand new mind, because someone in the church understood that this isn't God. This isn't God. And so that's what Legacy 31 do. We talk about God. We sure do. And I love it. I love the doors that have been open. I love the platforms that I've been able to get on to have that conversation. God want to set people free from all that mental, from all that bondage, from all of those things. God want to set people free. And I believe it's our responsibility to have that conversation. So every chance I get, I will have a survivor's corner. And we're going to talk about these things. And we're going to talk about how God set somebody free. In October, when we have our She Survived luncheon, we're hearing from a speaker who's been in those situations and God set them free. Because people need to see that I was there and now I want to be there too, because God can set me free. And so that's pretty much what Legacy 31 is about, showcasing these stories that God has turned around for his glory, and he's using these people for his glory. And so just be on the lookout. I keep my website updated as much as possible with any event that's coming on or coming up. People are always able. I always try to offer a virtual option. I was so excited when I had my first different country person who was interested in She Survived. So I always try to have virtual options in any event that we as Legacy 31 put on. It's always something virtual that I'll do. But I always update the website with everything that's coming up. Any speaking that I do, and you can always go to my website to order a She Survived shirt. You're more than welcome to share your story as well by emailing your story in. And with your story, you are mailed and shipped a free She Survived shirt. So the colors are purple for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's teal for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And then we have a white option. Maybe you just like white. Maybe you're an ally. You're just supporting people who've been in those situations, but you want a shirt as well. And so it
Right. So God bless you. I thank you so much. And listen, y'all, go follow Tia Payne. Legacy 31 is on Facebook, and you can reach out to her through her webpage, legacy31.org. Listen, she's dope. Y'all should go and check her out. I appreciate y'all for listening. This is the beginning of healing, and we should recognize that God wants us all healed. God bless you. My name is Sonia Green. Thank you for watching JTOL TV Talk. You have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Join us here next time on JTOL, Just Thinking Out Loud, where we ask and answer questions